"Sir, you need to move away from this area right now." The voice was strong and firm, made to make people follow orders. "Only people with permission can stand here." Michael Harrison, 89 years old, felt tired in his old bones, but he didn't move. He wasn't looking at the young officer talking to him. Instead, he stared at the big gray warship she was protecting. The USS Fearless. The ship smelled like new paint, ocean air, and something else. A clean metal smell that brought back memories from 70 years ago. He had been invited. He was certain about it. The letter was in his pocket, soft like fabric from checking it so many times. "Sir, do you hear what I'm saying?" the officer said, moving closer. Her name was Wilson. She was a lieutenant, and her uniform was perfectly pressed. Her brown hair was pulled back tight into a bun. She showed complete confidence that Michael knew very well. The confidence of young people who see everything as either right or wrong, black or white. Michael moved slightly, a small smile on his face. "I hear you, Lieutenant. I was just looking at the ship." "Look at it from over there," Wilson said, pointing with her hand toward a faraway section of the dock. A small crowd was already there. Families of the crew, important local people, and Navy fans, all waiting for the ceremony to start. "This deck is a restricted area. I have an invitation," Michael said quietly. He reached into his old jacket pocket. "Everyone has some story, sir," Wilson said with a tired voice. Her patience was running out. Another officer, a younger man, stood next to her. He looked uncomfortable. He looked from Wilson to the old man, watching quietly. "Unless your invitation comes with a military ID or a special pass for today, I cannot let you go forward." People were starting to notice. The talking got quieter, and people turned to look. Any argument, even a small one, was interesting to watch. Michael felt their eyes on him, a hot feeling on his neck. He wasn't trying to make a scene. He was just a man trying to get on a ship. Wilson stood very stiff and straight. Her feet were apart, her hands behind her back. Everything about her showed control and authority. She was the guard, the wall of Navy rules. To her, Michael wasn't a guest. He was a possible problem, a risk to security. An old man, probably confused, who walked away from his group. "I don't have a current ID," Michael finally said, taking the folded letter from his pocket. It was from the Secretary of the Navy's office. "But I have this." Wilson took the letter without real interest. Her eyes moved quickly over it. She wasn't really reading, just looking for reasons to say no. "This is just a standard letter, sir. It says you're a veteran. We thank you for serving, but that doesn't let you walk onto an active Navy ship during a ceremony." She handed it back like it was dirty. The man beside her looked uncomfortable. "Lieutenant, maybe we should just call the captain's office to make sure." "I am the officer on duty," Wilson said sharply, her voice quiet but angry. The younger man looked down. "I am responsible for keeping this ship and crew safe. I will not bother the captain, because an old man is confused about where to go." She looked directly at Michael again, her voice getting harder. "Sir, this is my last warning. Please go back to the public area, or I will have security remove you from the dock." It was humiliating, not from her words, but from her tone. The tired way she talked down to him, the complete certainty that he didn't matter. He was just something to be cleared away before important people came. The crowd's whispers got louder, mixed with pity and curiosity. He saw phones going up, catching his quiet shame. Wilson's eyes looked down at Michael's old jacket. On the left side was a small faded patch. The colors were washed out from many years. It showed a dark blue circle with a silver sword going through a stormy cloud. The edges were worn and torn. "And what is this supposed to be?" she asked, with a small mocking smile. She touched the patch with her finger. "Some kind of gift from your local veterans club? A reunion souvenir?" The touch, the question, the casual disrespect. It unlocked something deep inside him. The busy dock, the shiny ship, the whispering crowd. Everything disappeared for just a second. The world became sound, a roaring noise, the deep growl of engines fighting a rough black ocean. The air was thick, not with salt, but with the sharp smell of smoke and fuel. A flash, not from a camera, but from a gun on the shore, showed the scared face of a boy no older than 20. Cold ocean spray hit his face, mixing with sweat and fear. His own hand, young and strong, held tight to a flight jacket sleeve, right over the same patch, brand new and bright. He held on as the small boat jumped, almost throwing them all into the freezing water. The memory left as fast as it came. Michael stood steady, his eyes clear. He looked at the lieutenant, her face showing smug certainty, and felt not anger, but deep sadness. She couldn't know. How could she? As Lieutenant Wilson prepared to give her final order, a man walked from the edge of the crowd. He was a chief petty officer. His face showed many years at sea. His uniform showed the quiet authority of someone who had seen many lieutenants come and go. He didn't recognize the old man or the patch, but he recognized the look in Michael's eyes. It was a look of great patience, the kind you only get in places where patience keeps you alive. He also saw the uncomfortable movements of senior officers in the VIP area who were noticing the problem at the entrance. The chief didn't wait. He took his phone from his pocket, turning away from the scene to hide the call. He didn't call security. He called the direct line to the Admiral's assistant, who was on the bridge of the Fearless. "It's Chief Stevens," he said quietly and urgently. "You need to get the Admiral. There's a problem at the deck. Lieutenant Wilson is about to arrest a civilian." "A civilian?" The assistant's voice was small and annoyed. "The Admiral is in a meeting. Can't the officer on duty handle it?" "No," the chief said firmly. "That's the problem. The officer is the problem. Listen, this civilian is an old veteran. He's wearing a jacket with some kind of old patch on it. I don't know what it is, but trust me, you need to get the Admiral down here right now." The chief's instincts, learned over 30 years of service, were screaming at him. This was not just a security issue. This was something else. On the bridge of the USS Fearless, the mood was controlled and tense. Rear Admiral Martinez, a man whose career was sharp and impressive, was reviewing the ceremony's final schedule with his senior staff. His assistant came over, clearing his throat. "Sir, a call from Chief Stevens on the dock." Martinez waved his hand. "I'm busy. Tell him to talk to the command staff." "Sir," the assistant said firmly, his voice lower, "it's about a civilian being arrested by Lieutenant Wilson at the entrance." The Admiral looked annoyed. A personnel problem? Minutes before a major event. Chief Stevens said to mention a patch the man is wearing. He described it as a silver sword, breaking through a storm cloud on a blue circle. The words hung in the air. The busy talk on the bridge got quiet. Admiral Martinez stopped talking. His head snapped up, his eyes locked on his assistants. The annoyance disappeared, replaced by sharp, intense focus. "Say that again," the Admiral ordered, his voice suddenly quiet and serious. "A silver sword, sir, going through a storm cloud." Martinez moved with surprising speed. He walked to a computer on the navigation table, typing quickly, entering classified access codes. He went to a deeply hidden sealed database of Navy Special Operations history. A single file name appeared, Operation Dark Wave. He clicked it. An image loaded. A scan of an old hand-drawn design. A dark blue circle, a silver sword, a stormy cloud. It matched the assistant's description perfectly. The Admiral's face, normally confident, turned pale. He looked at the officers around him, his expression serious. "Get my command staff," he ordered, his voice carrying weight. "The captain, the executive officer, the command master chief, all of them. We are going to the deck. Move now." The officers looked confused and alarmed, but followed instantly, rushing to follow the admiral as he walked toward the door. They didn't know what was happening, but they knew something big was unfolding. Back on the dock, Lieutenant Wilson's patience was completely gone. She didn't know about the high-level drama happening on the bridge. All she saw was a stubborn old man who wouldn't follow orders and was making her look bad in front of a growing crowd. "All right, that's enough," she said loudly and firmly. "I have given you every chance to cooperate. You are a security risk, and you are disrupting a Navy ceremony. I am placing you under temporary arrest until base security can identify you properly." She stepped forward, reaching for Michael's arm. "Turn around and put your hands behind your back. Now." This was the final step, the point of no return. Michael didn't move or fight back. He simply looked at her, and his eyes held not defiance, but deep disappointment that cut deeper than any anger. He had survived so much, only to be treated this way by someone who couldn't see past her rulebook. Just as her gloved fingers were about to touch his thin arm, a voice boomed from the top of the ramp, sharp and absolute, like a gunshot. "Lieutenant, stop immediately." Wilson froze, her hand in midair. The entire dock went silent. The crowd turned as one. Coming down the ramp with thunderous purpose was Rear Admiral Martinez, with the ship's captain, the executive officer, and several of his senior command staff. They weren't walking, they were marching. Their faces looked like stone. Their combined authority was a powerful force that washed over the dock. The sound of their polished shoes on the steel ramp was the only noise. Wilson's face went white. She snapped to attention, her body stiff with shock and fear. Admiral Martinez didn't look at her. His eyes were fixed on one person only. He marched directly to Michael Harrison. The crowd parted before him. He stopped exactly one step in front of the old man in the faded jacket. For a moment, he just looked at Michael, his expression showing awe and deep respect. Then, with a motion so sharp it seemed to cut the air, the Admiral raised his hand to his forehead in the sharpest, most heartfelt salute of his 40-year career. "Mr. Harrison," the Admiral's voice was thick with emotion, but it carried across the silent dock. "It is an honor, sir." Behind him, without a word, every single officer in his group, the captain, the executive officer, the entire command staff, snapped to attention and saluted. A wave of respect. A dozen high-ranking officers saluting a civilian in a worn jacket. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Phones that had been recording a moment of humiliation were now capturing a scene of incredible respect. Lieutenant Wilson stood frozen, her mind struggling to understand the impossible reality before her. This couldn't be happening. The Admiral lowered his salute, but remained at attention. He turned his head slightly, speaking not just to Michael, but to the entire crowd. "For those who don't understand what you are seeing," his voice boomed, "let me explain. This man is Michael Harrison, and that patch on his jacket," he pointed toward it, "is not a souvenir. It is the symbol of a unit that officially never existed, a special operations team from the Korean War, codenamed Operation Dark Wave." He paused, letting his words sink in. In the spring of 1952, intelligence reported that 2 enemy warships were preparing to leave Wonsan Harbor to attack a U.S. carrier group. The harbor was heavily protected by mines and guns on shore. A regular airstrike was too dangerous. So a team of 12 men, volunteers from the Navy's underwater demolition teams, the early version of today's SEALs, was sent in. The Admiral's eyes returned to Michael. They went in at night in rubber boats, through mine waters in freezing cold. They got past patrol boats and harbor defenses, carrying explosive mines. They attached those mines to the bottoms of both warships, right under the enemy's watch. They were discovered on their way out. A gunfight started. Of the 12 men who went in, only 4 made it back to the submarine waiting for them. Those 4 men saved the lives of over 5,000 American sailors on that carrier group. Their mission was so secret, it was sealed for 70 years. Their families were told they died in a training accident. He took a deep breath, his voice filled with respect. This man, then Ensign Michael Harrison, led that mission. He is the last surviving member of Operation Dark Wave. The letter in his pocket wasn't a standard letter. It was a personal invitation from the Secretary of the Navy to be the guest of honor at the ceremony for this ship, the USS Fearless, named to honor the courage he and his men showed that night. The silence on the dock was now complete, thick with awe and shame. The crowd stared at Michael, no longer seeing a confused old man, but a hero of history, a man of unimaginable bravery standing among them. Finally, Admiral Martinez turned his eyes on Lieutenant Wilson. His voice dropped, losing its booming quality and becoming ice cold. "You stand on a deck bearing the name Fearless," he said, his words precise and cutting. "A name meant to honor courage against impossible odds. You wear the uniform of the United States Navy, a symbol of service and sacrifice. And with all that history beneath your feet and on your shoulders, you looked at a hero of that history, and you saw him as a problem to be managed." He stepped closer to her. "Your job is to enforce rules, Lieutenant. But your duty is to use good judgment, to see the human being behind the rules, to understand the spirit of the law, not just the letter. You saw a weak old man. You should have seen a piece of the foundation this Navy is built on. Your authority does not give you wisdom. It demands it. You have failed that demand completely. Report to my flag captain's office at 0800 tomorrow. You and I are going to have a very long talk about your future." The Admiral turned back to Michael, his expression softening into deep apology. "Mr. Harrison, on behalf of the entire United States Navy, I am deeply sorry for the disrespect you have been shown." Michael raised a hand, stopping him. He looked past the Admiral, his gentle eyes landing on the terrified, shaking Lieutenant Wilson. "Admiral," Michael said, his voice quiet but clear, "the uniform changes. The ships get bigger, the weapons get smarter, but the water is just as cold, and the fear is always the same." She was doing her job, maybe too strictly, he added with a hint of a smile. "Don't be too hard on her. The best lessons are always the difficult ones. I should know." As he spoke those words of grace, a final clear image appeared in his mind. The rough ocean again, but this time from the dark interior of a submarine. He and the 3 other survivors wrapped in blankets, shaking from cold. Their faces marked with exhaustion and grief for the friends they'd lost. Their commanding officer stood before them. He held 4 small, newly made patches in his hand. He pressed one into each of their palms. "No one will ever know what you did tonight," the commanding officer had said, his voice thick with emotion. "There will be no medals, no parades, but you will know, and we will know. This is for you." So you remember what it costs to be fearless. Weeks turned into a month. The story of what happened on the dock of the USS Fearless became a quiet legend on the base. Lieutenant Wilson was not fired. Instead, she was reassigned. Her new duty, ordered personally by Admiral Martinez, was to develop and lead a new command-wide training program focused on Navy heritage and veteran relations. It became known as the Wilson Initiative. It was a punishment, yes, but it was also a path toward making things right. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, Michael Harrison was sitting in his usual spot at the local VFW post, drinking a cup of black coffee. The place was quiet, smelling of old wood, stale beer, and friendship. The door opened with a creak, letting in gray light. Sarah Wilson stood in the doorway, wearing civilian clothes. She looked younger, smaller, and much more vulnerable without her uniform. She spotted him and hesitated, then walked slowly to his table. She was holding a thick hardcover book, The Complete History of Navy Special Warfare. "Mr. Harrison," she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Michael looked up and smiled, a genuine, welcoming smile. "Lieutenant, please call me Mike." She held the book to her chest. "I was wondering if you would sign this for me." "I'd be honored," he said, pointing to the empty chair across from him, "but only if you'll sit and have a cup of coffee with me." She sat, her movement stiff and uncertain. He took the book and a pen she offered. He didn't sign his name on the first page. He opened it to the chapter on the underwater demolition teams in Korea. In the margin, he simply wrote, "For Sarah, never forget the sailors." Not just the ships. Mike Harrison. He pushed the book back to her. She looked at what he wrote, and her eyes filled with tears. "I wanted to apologize again," she said quietly. Michael waved it away. "You have," he said kindly. "Now you're learning. That's better than any apology." He leaned forward slightly. "Let me tell you about a man named Tommy, the best radio man I ever knew. He was from a small town in Ohio, and he was afraid of the dark." And as the rain tapped against the windows of the VFW hall, the old hero and the humbled young officer sat together, not as enemies, but as two people connected by the same institution, sharing a story. One was teaching, and one was finally ready to listen. The story of Michael Harrison is a powerful reminder that heroes walk among us. Their courage often hidden beneath the quiet surface of ordinary life. If you were moved by this story of quiet courage and ultimate respect, please hit the like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that honor our nation's finest.